Today, we are talking about how to pivot in your industry without burning down your business with Desa Larkin-Boutté. Hi, I'm Tracy Ann Rose, and I help high achieving spiritual women of color entrepreneurs break through income ceilings and reconnect with their intuition without burning down their business. Today, we have a fantastic guest for this conversation, Desa Larkin-Boutté. Desa, I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
And just a quick bio on Desa so you know her history. Desa Larkin-Boutté is a writer, producer, and development executive based in Los Angeles. After receiving her bachelor's in film and television from Boston University, she began her career on The Walking Dead and continued to work on hit shows like Better Call Saul and Westworld. Desa most recently served as a development executive for Third Rail Productions under a first look deal with Sony Pictures Television. Under their umbrella, she's developing Lamar Giles' novel, The Getaway, in conjunction with Don Cheadle's company, This Radical Act. Desa, so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we might have a surprise guest. Sorry, my cat Wednesday is very into your podcast, and she
Oh,
might.
Wednesday. Well, Wednesday, you are welcome. This is perfect for you. This is a little witchy, intuitive podcast. So, Black cat, is she black?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I was like,
She's a
am
black
I
cat. Yes.
assuming things? I've never seen her. So Desa and I are longtime friends. We've been friends since I think eighth grade.
Yeah.
So we've been navigating our entrepreneurial journey together. And I just really want to talk about how did you get started in your journey?
Oh man, that is how much time do we have? So
Right.
it has been exactly that. It's been a journey. So I was always so in love with storytelling. I loved reading, I loved movies. I just was always so enamored by it. And I think just intuitively, it's the only thing that I've ever wanted to do was to tell stories. And so I initially thought that I wanted to go into filmmaking as in proper like movies, feature films. And I went to school in Boston, studied film, and the very last class that I took of my senior semester was writing for television, and I fell in love. And so that really, I think, changed the course of what I was pursuing. Um, After I graduated, I moved back to Atlanta. And that's where I got my first foothold in the industry on The Walking Dead. I was there seasons 2 through 5, and did every job possible. I started off as a set PA. I ran base camp. I worked in post production as a post PA. I was the writer's PA. I was the writer's assistant for a hot second. And what's interesting is while that was happening, I felt so behind. I felt like I knew I wanted to write, I wanted to be with the writers, and I felt like every new position I took was a step towards that, but it was also you would climb a ladder, you'd move over to a new department and you'd start over again. You'd climb another ladder, you move departments, you start over again. And so it just took a very, I felt at the time I was doing it wrong. I felt like I wasn't on a direct path or as direct of a path as I should be. But I actually ended up learning so many wonderful things that have really serviced me in my career. After Walking Dead, I started working as a showrunner's assistant, and that's what led me to Better Call Saul and Westworld. But the reason why Peter Gould hired me on Westworld or on Better Call Saul was because I did have experience on set and in post, and I was with him, 50 weeks out of the year just doing the circuit of being in the room and being on set and being in all these meetings because I already had this foundation that I didn't even know I was building at the time. And then from there, started as a showrunner assistant on Westworld, and then I got to write and produce the second to last episode in conjunction with my dear friend, mentor, Denise Tay, who I then went on to work for with Third Rail. So, I think everything builds on each other, and even the things that feel so inconsequential or the things that feel like not in the proper place end up being exactly what we needed in the long run. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly where you needed to be, whether you knew it or not.
Exactly.
So I mean, I want to say for the lay listener who is not experienced in the entertainment industry, this probably sounds like an absolute dream to them. They're thinking about you like driving a Ferrari with these jobs. Can you explain a little bit about what it was actually like for you working these various roles? Like, what was the experience like?
No, I love that question. I think it's so important to have that. 'Cause, yeah, I think you're right. I think that, the industry is very it's presented as lots of glamour and it's Tinseltown, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of free labor. It's exhausting. And I think you really have to have a passion for it in order to make it worth any of it. Um, like early on set, it's a lot of you're working, 16-hour days for minimum wage and you're, out there. It's a very physically
Can you
demanding
say that
job.
again? Because I don't think people realize that minimum wage is like a part of the entertainment. They think everyone is just,
No, when I first started, and granted, this was many, many moons ago, but when I first started as a PA, I was making $7 an hour. And, I'm working 60, 80 hours a week. And, like it was insane to me. And when I moved out to California, same, like the cost of living skyrocketed compared to Atlanta, but yet my salary dipped, right? And so you had to really be creative in terms of, there were so many times where I would eat all of my meals at the office. Like I would get in early and have a bowl of cereal from the kitchen, and I would leave so late that that's where, you just kind of find where you need to survive. But I think what fuels you is you have this goal and you have this thought in mind. Um, but it is a double-edged sword. And I think that that kind of goes into the concept of pivoting, right? I think that something, the industry has changed so much within the last couple of years, but even prior to that, I think the last decade, there's been a huge shift in how things were done. And so when I was first starting, there was still this promise of, you serve a couple of years and you pay your dues and then you make it. And that infrastructure didn't really exist anymore. And so you're kind of working off of this promise that no longer it doesn't actually cash in. And I think at a certain point you have to kind of figure out, what are the things that are important to me about what I'm pursuing and how do I do it in a way that is actually sustainable and I can actually feed myself and my kid and pay my rent. Like there's so many other factors that you have to think about in terms of chasing after this as a career. Because,
yeah,
even on the development side, I've been very fortunate. Like the last 2 years, I've worked for what's called a pod. And so it was a team of five of us, and we, had a contract. And so I was salaried for the last 2 years, which is amazing. But outside of that, when you as a writer are developing a concept or developing a show, or you're writing on your own, even if you are connected with a studio or you have a buyer, a lot of times, development fees are few and far in between these days, even for high level writers. And so oftentimes you are doing a lot of work on your craft for free with the intention of you'll get paid if it sells, right? And so, it's almost like if you're a doctor and you perform a surgery, but you only get paid if it's successful. You know what I mean? Like, I'm hoping there it's this like I feel
no,
like the
no, no.
success.
Like, let's be real. Sometimes surgeries are not successful, but they tell you, like, okay, like, there's
Yeah,
no
yeah,
pass
yeah.
for a writer.
Right.
It's just
Yes.
like, maybe we'll pay you, maybe we won't.
Right. Yeah. And so you really have to have a lot of faith. You have to have a lot of I think you have to have a lot of peace within yourself. Like what I think of, and not to go off tangent, I feel like I'm taking on this whole zigzaggy world of my brain, but
That's all
um,
good. That's welcome.
there are, and I forget where in the world, I'm so sorry, but there are these monks that create these very intricate um, murals and patterns with sand, right?
Mandalas,
And
yes.
yes, yes, that's exactly it. And the whole concept of it is you spend so much time creating something so painstakingly detailed and beautiful. And then when it's done, it gets wiped away. And that's how I feel about development, where you have to be able to put your whole self into something and you have to believe in it and you have to see the trajectory of it and you have to know, like, yes, this could be amazing. And you have to put all that effort into it. And then you also have to be okay with it going away because the majority
Absolutely.
of projects will go away. Um, and you can't let that jade you. So it's not for everyone for sure. And it's definitely, it takes a while, I think, to get to a place of peace within it. But here we are.
So there's a few things that really popped out to me when you were speaking. Um, and two things. So I will say them before I forget them, and then we can address them. So the biggest thing when you were talking about wanting to climb the ladder, a lot of people listening to the podcast, they have had that experience too, where they're told, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, it will automatically lead to this wonderful career. This could be from their coach, this could be from the industry itself. But we know that that does not actually apply to women of color the same way that it applies to perhaps our white male counterparts, for example. So I also wanted to highlight that and maybe go into that a little bit on discussions of like that may be why some people may need to pivot and find their own way by stepping into their intuition more. The other thing I wanted to say that was so beautiful when you were mentioning, I believe it's the Tibetan monks who do mandalas, is the detachment. And that's what pivoting really requires, is what I'm hearing. It requires the ability to put in the effort fully, but then also let it go and see what comes next. And that actually, if you want to comment on either of those things, great. But then if you don't, I mean, either way, I have another question for you. So yes, feel free if something came up for you to comment on.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said was, I mean, I think both are really interesting. And we can talk at nauseum, absolutely on both paths. But I think that I think what you said about detachment is so true. And I think that there's sometimes a confusion that detachment means a lack of caring or a lack of
Yeah, almost like
effort.
apathy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I think there's a difference between phoning it in and going through the motions versus really caring and really understanding, yeah, this is a beautiful thing and this can live and breathe and exist, but also I am okay if it doesn't, right? And I think when you do reach that place of apathy, that's definitely a clear sign of you gotta get off this train, right? You gotta figure out what else works for you. And then, sorry, remind me of the first.
So being a woman of color in, I mean,
Oh,
really
yeah.
truly any industry, you guys. I mean,
Yeah.
coaching, there's underrepresentation, healing work, there's underrepresentation, entertainment, underrepresentation. And for those of you who've listened to the podcast season one, know that I was previously an actor. I left the industry because I was I had to audition for a role called Ghetto Fabulous Baby Mama. And I was so offended by how inaccurate that was in terms of my own energy and the fact that in the script I had a 17-year-old, even though I had just birthed my baby. So I'm like, I don't want to be a part of perpetuating this narrative that Black women are always ghetto or are always in financial constraints because of their choices and teen mom. There was a series of things that I just felt. I think there was also violence in the script where I was like threatening my I didn't want to be a part of it. And so I had to say, like let me find something that fits better for me, because that was very I knew I wouldn't be proud if my son or if my children saw that work in the future.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much to talk about in terms of just the institution of it all and the structure of it all, but I think kind of going into also your main concept of intuitive nature in the creative. So I had managers way early in my career that I did not feel like were a good fit for me. But I felt like it was better to have them than to not. I felt like it was better to say I am
Oof.
represented than to say that
We've
I'm
all
not
been there.
represented.
We've all been there where we had a team that wasn't really a supportive team, but we
No.
thought this is the only way to success,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And I remember when it came to writing, they were kind of trying to guide what my next project was going to be. There was this feature that they had me trying to write, and it just none of it felt authentic to who I was or what I wanted to do or what I wanted to say. And so I kind of just on my own wrote this piece that felt very true to the Black experience, to discussing depression and mental health, which is something that's really, near and dear to my heart. And we could spend, countless episodes specifically on just the structure and the institution of it all. Um, but I think what comes to mind right now is very, very early on in my career, I had one of the first managers that I had. I remember feeling like they were not a good fit for me, but feeling like it was better to be able to say that I was represented than to not be. And so I stuck with them and I gave them everything I could and every, tip, trick, whatever. Like I remember they wanted me to write a feature not based on anything other than like, this is what's hot in the market right now. So write this type of movie. And so I did, and gosh, like it was a year-long process of notes and more this and less that, and none of it felt connected to anything. It was just purely speculative off of what would sell. And granted, I think there is some, there's definitely something to being able to read the market and read the tea leaves, and it is a spectator sport and understanding how to navigate within that. I felt no personal connection to anything that I was doing. I didn't feel like they understood me as a writer or what my voice was or the stories that were important to me to tell. And so I made the choice to, like, in addition to playing ball, I also wrote a pilot that I was very much in love with and felt very much more like the things that I wanted to speak about. And it was about the Black community and depression and this father-son relationship. And those were all themes that were really important to me, mental health and the Black experience and, family dynamics and generational trauma and how we kind of, do our best to overcome those. And I remember I sent it to them and they were just like, they didn't get it. Like, we don't understand at all. Like, it was just point blank, like, we don't know what this is. We don't get it. And at that point, it's like, all right, well, this to me represents everything that I am as a writer. I don't think this is going to be a good fit. And so, without having a parachute, like I left, but I remember I submitted that script to the Austin Film Festival and it made it to the semifinals that round or that year, right? And I think that there is something to the awards that I have won, the scripts.
Internationally, that you're an internationally recognized writer. Like that's what's insane about this is you're an internationally award-winning writer.
And what's fascinating, and I think that's like where the dichotomy comes in, right? It's like the awards that I have won. So it was that script. I won an award for a script called Zora and Zizi, which was also about the Black experience. And that one, was based off of my time in Boston as a college student, and the entire premise being two Black women who have the same name having to pretend to be the same person, and just how society views them, how they view each other. And it's just this beautiful, exploration of race and identity. And I remember I wrote that during the George Floyd protests because I felt so helpless. I had a young child, it was COVID. Like, I didn't feel like I could be out physically protesting and being a part of the larger community, which under different circumstances I normally would be. And so I remember just taking a week where I stayed up like every night and I just wrote this piece, and then that one won creative screenwriting's unique voices competition back in 2020, I believe. That one, like, it got huge acknowledgement, but like we couldn't sell it, and I had a feature film that I wrote about Japanese internment based off of my extended family's experience with that in California. And same, like there's I think there's what I'm finding is when I write about the things that intuitively I'm like, this is what I feel connected to, then those are the pieces that do the best in terms of getting recognition, in terms of winning prestige, whatever. Yet I have been unable to make that into a commercial success, right? And I think that that speaks to the state of the industry in terms of its relationship with original content, but also its relationship with content from people of color, from women. And not to say that there aren't any stories out there. I think that we do have a handful of really beautiful, culturally infused pieces. But I think at large, there's not really a pipeline for it as there is with, like cop procedurals. It's like there's a huge,
Gosh, like we can't get enough of them apparently. Like it's
right.
just
Yeah.
we're inundated. Yes.
So yeah, I mean that's a long way of saying I agree. I definitely think that there is it's a different journey for people in our position, and I think that's why it is so important sometimes to say, okay, like I will play ball and I will work within the system, but also on the side, like I'm gonna write and do the things that I think are important, and then sometimes those are the things that shine the brightest. So
So what I'm hearing is you intuitively recognized I need to lean into what's important to me. And if the people surrounding me, whether that's people who are supposed to be uplifting me in my career or people who are in the same writing room, that that means that is an indicator that you need to pivot. If you are underpaid, if you're doing a lot of emotional or even manual labor for free, if you find that the things that you are most passionate about, the values that you base your life off of and your artistry off of is not respected or is not understood, that like that is a huge sign that it is time to pivot. And so you've done a beautiful job of pivoting in this industry and utilizing that backlog of experience, right? So talk to me, we know where you started. You were PAing, you were assisting all the people. Now tell me where you are now and how did your intuition help you get there?
yeah, I think so after Westworld ended, the series wasn't picked up. And then I took some time away from the industry. This was leading up to the strike, just things were bleak. I took some time away and that was really hard. Like I remember, crying to you on the phone, be like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know who I am outside of this pursuit. Like, this is so much of my identity. This is so much of who I feel I am. And I don't know how to exist outside of this realm. And so I took some time to really sit with that, right? And I took a job completely not related to the industry and I hated it, but that was also a lesson. That was also, knowledge that I was gaining about myself. Like, okay, I can do other things, but these things don't fill my well the same way that working in this creative space does. And so then I got a call from, well, two things happened. Two things happened simultaneously. So right leading up to the writer's strike, I was working with this comedian named Stephen Ho who had gained like a lot of notoriety on TikTok and all the socials, doing comedy about his time as an ER tech. And his sketches were, very much set in the ER. They were very quick, they were very funny. But what I liked about it, it was very full of heart, right? And I feel like even though they were very quick and short, there was so much that he wanted to say about the healthcare industry, about the homelessness epidemic, about nurse burnout, because this is during COVID and like right on the heels of. And for me, I remember feeling like these things are all in my brand, right? And um, I got into it a little bit with my reps, the next pair of reps that I had, because coming off of Westworld, they're very key in you have to do another sci-fi piece, like sci-fi is your brand, you have to like follow that up. And I was like, no, I think the whole point of sci-fi is to explore humanity, right? And even though this is
Yeah,
a
and
half hour
sci-fi, I've what? Like if they've written any of your like the pieces you've previously described, none of them involved sci-fi elements. So when in terms of your personal writing.
yes, yeah, but I do think that like, and I can geek out a little bit on like that whole genre. And you're right, like I think that of the things I write, I'm more of a grounded drama lady. But I love horror. I do love that space, and I do feel like like I grew up watching The Twilight Zone, and I always felt like even though we were not necessarily represented in terms of the actors who were on that show, the concept of being an other, the concept of trying to find your place in the world, like there were so many things that really spoke to our existence that I really love. And I think that those were the like so what I always say, like when I'm talking to writers, is it's okay to be genre agnostic in that, you can write fantasy, you can write this, you can write that, but the key is to know what your through line is. And I think for me, my through line is really finding those social justice pieces. Like, what are the things that make me feel like I am educating while entertaining? What are the things that where are the communities that need a platform, right? Like build the platform and then pass the mic is kind of the idea. And so um going into this with Steven, we partnered up and I helped write or adapt his comedy or his you know this social media comedy like thing. Like he had done an amazing like 13 million followers. He already had like huge success, but there's a big difference between something that's 15 seconds long and a half hour story and narrative and building out that world and building out that characters and discussing what are their wants and why are we following them week to week. But all this is to say, it was a beautiful experience and I really loved it. And what I learned about that was I really loved working with other creatives and I really loved helping bring their stories to life, right? And so when Denise called me, so she and I worked together in Westworld, and then she called me and said, and this was after the strike, she and two of her good friends, who are also women, showrunners, writers, producers, were founding this company called Third Rail and asked me to come on and kind of be and exist like in this development space. I was like, yeah, I actually just had this experience that everyone told me not to do. By the way, like, yeah, my manager's very not excited about it. I did it and then they loved it. And I had so many meetings off of that script. I had so many meetings off of that script because there was confidence and there was love and there was excitement about it that shone through. And then, the strike, like it ended up not moving forward in the places we were hoping, but it still felt good to know that there was, acknowledgement and that it did well. Like it did really well given the circumstances. Um, but again, like what I learned from it was I like developing and I, as a writer, am able to detach, right? Like what my personal drive is with helping someone else achieve theirs. And that's a process that I really love and value. So then when Third Rail was formed, going into development felt so good. Like I felt like I had this little test run. And then being on the development side, it's all the things that I love to do. I remember when we started, like, I'm getting paid to read books. Yes, please. Like, this isn't, don't tell anyone. I feel like I'm not, like, this is great. But being able to just consume stories and just get back to literature and movies and films and just finding things that we liked, finding writers that we liked, matchmaking, and that's kind of the producer side. It's like you're kind of figuring out like what pairs and what partnership works well. And then from there, kind of helping shape those stories, right? And it's not about how I would do it as a writer, it's understanding this writer's vision and helping shape that while also looking at the market, knowing what's selling, knowing what's not selling, and kind of being able to curate that. To take out, and we did end up selling a show, which is really wonderful and amazing. And the one that I'm working on, The Getaway, we still have a couple of other pitches that we're going out with. And so like it was that was my pivot, right? Like I went from I have to write and direct film to, oh, TV is kind of cool, to I'm working in all of these jobs that I don't really like, but they actually ended up really shaping me as a writer and a producer. And then going into having these all of these experiences, I think being able to look back and say, what did I learn from that? What did I like? What did I not like? And then keeping all of those little pieces and being able to make that informed decision for the next step. So to answer your question in terms of next steps, so we do have this show that is in development right now at a network. So fingers are crossed that moves forward. But in the meantime, I'm really looking forward to, I think honestly, kind of moving into a teaching space. Like I'm really interested in potentially putting together, workshops on pitching or just
And I
helping
do
other.
want to, if you don't mind, cut you off
Yes,
here to brag on you a little bit, to ask you, you've already started the teaching journey. Have you not? I recall you being asked to speak. I think you also did mentorship as well, like with ISA, is that correct? And then you
yes,
also recently did a panel in conjunction or supported, sponsored by Stars. Tell me more about
yes.
those two things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, I think, also kind of comes into just the intuitive, like, I think nature of just saying yes to things that feel good. And you don't necessarily have to have an agenda or objective to it. It's just, this feels nice, let's do that. And then they all
Yes.
kind of stack up, right? So the ISA, the International Screenwriter Association, I connected with them back when I won creative screenwriting for Zora and Zizi. Part of my package, if you will, was a year with those guys, and they're fantastic. Shane and Felicity have become really good friends, and I was on their top writers to watch for whatever year that was, and I've been on their development slate, and they also, like, their whole platform is designed to partner creatives with the people who can help them, really get their ideas off the ground. I will shout out and support this business all the time. So, yeah, there have been times throughout the years where I've been asked to give an interview or speak on, various things, and I've always said yes, with no objective, no agenda, like, and then one day, and so they asked me to do this panel with them, and I said yes, and then I guess, and when I said yes out of, yeah, of course. Like, I love these guys, absolutely. And it wasn't until, like, it took a second for me to kind of sink in, like, what it was. And yeah, so the Rap and Stars every year host the Power Women Summit, and it is this beautiful day of just women in the industry, all women who I've watched and admired from afar for a really long time, and it is just a love fest of these professional women coming together and speaking on their personal journeys of being producers or actors or writers, whatever their specialty is. And I was asked to join Shane and Felicity of the ISA on a panel, and we did a workshop about how to brand yourself. And it was, all about how to walk into a room and how to, be able to present you and your projects and the things that you love in a way that will resonate and stick with people and lead to success. And it was such a proud moment of being able to look back and just see how all of these little experiences and all of these times where I felt like, am I on the right path? Am I doing this right? I don't know. Just like kind of, step by step, and just seeing, sometimes you don't realize how far you've come until you actually take a step to look back. And that was kind of a very reflective moment for me of like, oh yeah, like I actually have all these little pebbles that I've gathered along the way is actually now this, this deep well of knowledge, and I am able to give that back to people in a way that's helpful and informative, and that feels really nice. And so I think I'm in an era of wanting to lean into that more and kind of figuring out. I have a couple of ideas of how I want to pursue this. They're kind of in the works still, but I definitely, in 2026, hope to offer some workshops, offer some, some discussion on branding, yes, but also pitching, since that's what I've been doing the last 2 years, is helping writers develop pitches, building pitch decks, understanding the market in terms of, you know, what helps, what doesn't, and that's something that I'm really excited to pursue.
So I think what you said is, I mean, amazing. Congratulations. Like, congratulations on being up there in such a like the place that you always really belonged, honestly. Being up on that stage with other professionals, seasoned professionals and experts in the entertainment industry, and being able to share your wealth of knowledge that you've accumulated. Um, in that, what was really interesting is you mentioned the power being able to brand properly, being able to pitch properly. So I would be very curious, what are three like main steps, or perhaps maybe three takeaways or notes that people can use? Because this is for all entrepreneurs. We do need to learn how to brand and pitch ourselves effectively in order to have a supportive network, a network that is going to feed us mutually, like a mutually beneficial network that understands our values and aligns with the types of people we want to help, the types of problems we want to solve in the world. So, how would you recommend somebody start that process if they are at a pivot point where they're realizing, like, oh my God, look, I hate this. I hate this. I'm, miserable. I'm depressed. My income is plateauing. I'm feeling frustrated by looking at the faces that I look at every day when I walk into work. Or if you're a coach, maybe you're even getting just pissed off looking at your clients or a message they sent you. What would you say to them about finding that alignment in your industry where you can then find those people where it's exciting, it's an easy yes, like it feels good in the body to work with?
No, I love that. And I'll answer it two ways, if I may. I think
Sure.
um, the first way I would say, so I think as women, and I think as women of color especially, I think sometimes we get caught up in all the things that we can do, right? Because I think sometimes we do have to operate. We're so many things to so many people. We're partners, we're mothers, we're sisters, we're all of it. And I think that we are so capable of so many things that that is typically the starting point of like, let me list all the things that I can do, right? But just because you can do something doesn't mean that that's where you should be putting your effort.
Say it
And
again. Say it again for the people in the back.
just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so, for me, whenever we speak with writers, right, like whenever we have general meetings, which for general public, it's, we'll meet with people and just kind of get a sense of what is it that you like, what are you into, and then that way, as we are off in the world reading, finding material, we can have an idea of, who might this be good for. And I remember, as a baby writer, they would always tell me like you have to pick a lane, right? And I always hated that because I felt like that it felt like it, you know, closed doors. But then being on the development side of things, I realized where that comes from. And I think, I gave this example at the panel. Like if I meet with a writer, we're going to call her Lisa, and she tells me, and I know her work, she does beautiful work, and I'm really want to work with her. And she tells me, well, I'm open for anything. Okay, that sounds good until I go into a staff meeting and I'm speaking to my team and they're saying, "Hey, we have this book about werewolves. Like, who would be good for this? Would Lisa be into this?" Maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't actually know, right? So now this is
Yeah.
kind of an unknown. And if there's another writer on our slate who's like, yes, I want fantasy, I want whatever, whatever, that's where that's going, right? So I need a soundbite to be able to fight for you, right? And I think that when we're trying to be too available, it leaves us unavailable, right? Like we're not actually able to give anyone anything that they can fight on our behalf with, right? So if I have that same meeting and we leave it and Lisa says, I've worked in sci-fi for 10 years and I love it. She wants to find a show. She wants to find like a very grounded, like medical procedural. She's really into like, let's find the humanity in hospitals, whatever. Then when I'm in my staff meeting and we have a show or we have like an idea that pops up, and it could be it could be in space, it could be in the West, it could be whatever, whatever. But if there's a medical element to it, if there's some sort of people helping people, I can say, oh, who'd be great for this? Because I understand the thought, right? And I think what's key is being vaguely specific. And what I mean by that is kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, in that, I have scripts that are set in college. I have scripts that are set that are historical, that are adaptations, that are fantasy, that are sci-fi, that are grounded. And when I go into a room, I'm not going to pitch myself as I can do anything. I'm going to say my through line, which is I am interested in telling stories about women who, and especially now in this stage of life,
Yes.
who are reclaiming their power. I am interested in stories about family dynamics and trauma healing, and so, but especially right now, definitely women reclaiming power. And so then if that exec that I'm speaking to hears a story, whether it's a comedy, whether it's historical, no matter the genre, if there is a female character who is burning something down and reclaiming her power, then, like there's a way to be genre agnostic and still be specific about what you want, right? Um, so to answer your question, this got very winded, very long-winded, I apologize, but I think that so to me, it's not about what you can do. It's about what are you passionate about? Like what are the things that you want? Like if you could close your eyes and think about like if you had no there were no boundaries, what is the thing that you could get up and be excited about every day? Because when we talk to writers, the ones who are excited about something, that's like that joy, that passion is what gets us excited, especially because it is such an arduous process and because it does take years to get anything on air and because so much of that is unpaid, like you have to be fed off a passion. And so I think that's key is finding your passion.
So, what I'm hearing is that first and foremost, authenticity is important. So, knowing who you are, knowing what you're passionate about, what topics are really important to you, and broadcasting that through your work, not being afraid to say, hey, for myself, hey, I love working with high achieving spiritual women of color entrepreneurs. Very specific, very specific, but in that people know what my values are. They know that what I'm passionate about. And it's the same for anyone else that's looking to pivot. Look at what you're passionate about. Find that, be authentic in that expression and share that. And when you recognize that there is some discomfort or somebody is not supporting or understanding on maybe a cultural or a value level what you're bringing to the table, that is a sign that it is time to find a new, it's time to pivot and it's time to stop saying yes to things that don't please you or excite you and say yes to those things that ignite your passion.
No, absolutely. And I think kind of, hitting on the intuitive nature of it all. But like to speak on the intuitive nature of it all, I think, I heard something once that I thought was really beautiful, and that's anxiety asks questions, but intuition speaks in statements. And I
Ooh.
think that when you are like, oh, but what if this doesn't work out, or what happens here, what happens there, like that's your anxiety talking. And that doesn't mean that you don't give it attention. You can speak to it and say, okay, what am I worried about? What are the pivots I need to plan for? Use that as a tool, but not as something that's going to hold you back. And I think there's a difference between that versus sometimes your gut's just going to say no, and that's okay. And I think as women, we kind of talk ourselves into, yeah, but, and then maybe, and then this. But I think if your gut is telling you no to an opportunity, no is a complete statement. Like that is a full sentence. You don't have to necessarily justify anything. And I think that's really helpful in terms of finding where you do feel good and where you do feel positive. So
And
the other
also
thing
more
I will also
opportunities financially.
yeah, 1,000%. Because you're not going to do your best work if you feel like you're having to guard or protect or like look out. Like it's just you have to be in a space of being able to do something well. And that reminds me of another thing that I wish I had written down, who I saw speak on this because I want to give credit where credit's due. But I saw someone speaking about the brand Nutella and how it's a global brand. Everyone knows it. You say the word and you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? But I think something wild, like only 3% of the world actually eat it, and yet they're huge. And what they didn't do was, oh, I have this product, only 3% like it. Let me try and expand to get the other 97. They said, I'm really good at this thing. Let me put everything into this one thing. And it's a huge success. Like that is a huge company and a huge, product. And that's okay that it's only 3%, because I think when we try to overextend ourselves to try and be as marketable to as many people as possible, we actually do ourselves a disservice. And so I think finding, and that's not to say that you can't evolve and that you can't, expand your brand, but I think especially when pivoting, when starting out, it's so important just to kind of focus on what is the thing that brings me joy? What is the thing that I am passionate about? Let me start there and let me just focus on that. And then once that gets going, you'll know what your next step is when you're ready for it, right? You'll recognize it when you see it. And I think after a while, you take so many little steps and then you turn around and see how far you've come, right? But I think it's really important to be present and mindful in each step and to really give each moment its due attention, um, and live in that space as authentically and as fully as possible.
I completely agree. After that mic drop moment, we're going to go to a brief break and we'll be right back with Desa Larkin-Boutté. You've made your first 10K, but now you're feeling stuck. You're feeling stagnant in your business, but you want more. You want consistency. You want to bring in 10K months, not just 10K years. If this sounds like you, you're probably already working with coaches or in group coaching programs where the strategies just aren't clicking for you. They require more time, more energy, or they simply don't feel in alignment with where you are now. That's why I created Soul Centered Success, my 6-month signature program for coaches who are ready to tap into their intuition and create a business that is sustainable and profitable, all based on you. You are the foundation. So based on your body, meaning your physical capacity, your brain, your nervous system, and previous conditioned habits, as well as your soul's blueprint, your astrology, human design, numerology, etc. So if this sounds like you, please go ahead and book your intuitive strategy call. The link is in the show notes. I'll see you there. We are back. So Desa, thank you so much for being here. We're going to just wrap things up, tie a little bow on it, and grab my hair, tie a little bow on it. So what is one action step that you would give somebody who is currently wanting to pivot, but not burn bridges or ruin their reputation or disrupt their stability?
That's a really great question. I think disrupting stability is a huge one, right? I think that's always the biggest thing that keeps us where we are sometimes, is feeling
Especially
like,
as women of color. Yeah.
oh, 1,000%. And I still stand by, I will always say, take the job that beats you, and then you can still figure out the creative. Like, I think sometimes I feel like, especially in my own life, there's this feeling that you have to make the right decision in that moment, because if you make the right one, the universe will reward you. And if you make the wrong one, the universe will punish you. Like, you will suffer because of it. And truthfully, there's suffering and joy on both paths. And so I think sometimes we get stuck feeling like we're going to mess something up by making the wrong choice, but just make a choice. And it's a small one or it's a big one. But once you make it, you then learn something. And then once you have that information of this works or this doesn't, you can make another choice, right? I think taking the first step is always hardest. Um, but once you get into this mindset of, something that that I've really tried to incorporate this past year, is when looking at a blank canvas, when looking at that undiscovered trail, whatever feeling of anxiety you have, changing apprehension to curiosity, right? Instead of saying, oh, I'm so nervous, what all the things that could potentially happen, changing that mindset to like, oh, I'm so curious to see how this is going to go. I'm so curious to see what I'm going to do in this new scenario, right? And I think that that allows us grace to take that first step and to make mistakes and to not be perfect in it, because we're not going to be. Things are new. We're figuring things out, and that's part of the process, and that's part of the beauty of living. So that's what I would say. I would say just try to stay open and curious about that next step and take it. And if you feel like it's the wrong direction, you can take another one, right? That's the beauty of of life.
Yeah, you haven't made a decision that's killed you yet.
Yeah.
So you've
Here,
got a
we're
good
still
track
here
record.
somehow. Something's
You've
working,
got a
right?
good track record. So
Yes.
keep going and trust yourself. I love that takeaway and I love that insight on how to recognize when it's that time. It's that time to take that next step and that you can always once again pivot. You can always adjust. I would love to hear, Dessa, what do you have coming up next and how can our listeners connect to you?
Well, I'm in a space now. I'm so excited for this I'm definitely in a new chapter in life and I'm still figuring out the mechanics of it, but I am so thrilled to be getting back to my creative roots. I have a play that we put on last year that I'm revamping now. Projects that are in development, workshops that we're piecing together. The best way to follow for that is my Instagram, which is at Desaverse. And hopefully I will have some fun updates in the new year.
I love that. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you again for coming. For everyone who listened today, thank you for being here. Please like, subscribe, share with a friend, rate 5 stars, and definitely go follow Dessa. And if you're feeling like you like some more intuitive help with your business, please book your intuitive strategy call. All of this information will be there for you in the show notes. We'll see you next time. Bye.